I'm going to get a bit technical on this one because anyone who understands object-oriented programming understands the problem of multiple inheritance, namely that you can't take one class and then extend it multiple times at the same level. You have to choose which extended class you're going to use, and that means that there is a problem if you have multiple people who are unrelated, say add-on developers, all trying to extend one particular class because you don't know what the ladder of extension is. You might have one add-on that extends the user entity and then another one that wants to also extend the user entity, but in order to do that it would have to extend the extension. You see what I mean? Well, XenForo has a way around that, and we call it the class extension system, and I'm going to use it to add an additional relation to the user entity, because our note entity defines a relation to the user table, and strictly speaking the user table, the user entity should define a relation back, so that not only can we say give me the user that is related to this note, but I can also go to a user and say give me the notes that are related to this user. It's a slightly different relationship because it's going to be a self to many relationship rather than a self to one, but it's worth having nonetheless. So let's go and see how we do it. Here in the user entity you can see that there are a whole bunch of relations already set up. So ideally, I guess, I'd want to just insert my new relation to the notes entity right here, but of course I can't do that because this is core XenForo code. I can't manipulate that because it would get overwritten by the next XenForo release, and of course I wouldn't be able to distribute it. So what I'm going to have to do is extend it. To do that, I'm going to head over to my entity directory and create a new PHP class called user. And then I'm going to tell it that that extends the XF entity user. At the moment, this class is a copy of the XenForo user entity. It has no customization at all. But what we want to do is we want to customize the getStructure function. So we'll redefine it here. It's a public static function, and then there it is. Now at this point I don't want to return the parent getStructure. I want to just assign it to a variable, because once I've assigned it to a variable I can work with it before I return it. So what do I actually want to do? Well, I want to get a relation, so I'm going to use my entity relation shortcut here to get the basics, and then I'm going to insert that into a little thing like this. So I'm going to say structure relations notes equals, and then we'll start off here. So the entity I want to relate to is demo/pad::note, and the type is self to many. I'll explain the difference of that in a moment, and the conditions are that the related field is the user ID field, and it's not a primary key, so we just have to leave it like that, and then we can return the structure. And as far as that little class is concerned, that's all we have to do. Now a quick note about this self to many thing. If you tried to include this notes relation in a with on the Finder, you're going to come up with an error that says that the entity system doesn't support that. Well, what it actually means there is that you can't do a join on that. You can request it specifically, but you can't do a with, because you can't join a single user to multiple notes in this particular case. So while the relation is valuable, it can't be used in the same way as a to-one relationship. In the development section of the control panel, you'll find class extensions, and no items have been created yet, so let's add one. The base class name is xfEntityUser. You can see that I've done this once before. And the extension class name is DemoPadEntityUser. The execution order I'm just going to leave as the default of 10, and I'm going to enable the extension. What this is saying is it's going to glue that extension onto that class, and whenever we try to instantiate that class, it will actually create a version that is extended by this and any other class extension that also tries to extend xfEntityUser. So let's save that out. I should just add a quick warning here. If you extend the user entity with something that doesn't work, everything will blow up because you won't be able to log in, you won't be able to log out, and you will probably have to go and do some database hacking to get yourself back in order. So make sure that this stuff works before you enable it. I'm back in the Note controller now, and I'm just going to show you how that too-many relationship works. So I'm going to go and create a new action, which I'm not going to link anywhere because this is really just a demo, but let's do this. So public function action user, and what this action is going to do is it's going to allow you to pick a user and then show all of the notes that belong to that user. So let's say, let's check that we've got a user first. So if user ID equals this filter user ID, which is an unsigned integer, then first of all, let's make sure that we've actually got a valid user. So user equals this assert record exists. The type of record is an xfUser, and we're looking at user ID, which we've just filtered from input. Then I'm going to add phpdoc for that, just because it makes it easier to do refactoring if we ever need to. xfEntityUser. And then I'm going to fetch their posts, and it's as easy as this. Notes equals user, and the name of the relation that we just defined. So we called it notes, so it's just notes, and that's it. That will fetch all of the notes that belong to the user that we've just picked up. Let's test it. I'm going to add an extra line here so that I can put a breakpoint on there and see the result of notes. So let's head into the front end and go to my action user. At this point, it's going to say that the page can't be found because there was no reply from the controller. That's great, because what I actually want to do is just check that we get there with the debugger. So let's run that again, and yes, we're there. So great. And now I'm going to add my user ID to the query string, / user ID equals my user ID 1. Here we are back in the code. So now we check that the user record exists, and it does, because of course that's me. And then we've picked up user notes, and here we are, we have 21 entities, and they are all the ones that belong to me. Now I've skipped ahead a little here, and I've created a template called DemoPadUser, and what this template does is it checks to see if we have a user specified, and if it does, it shows me their username, and then whatever happens, we get this list that's entitled C notes belonging to. Then we loop through all the users that we're passed and create a link for each user. Now this template's unfinished, but it's good for demoing at the moment. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get rid of all of that stuff and prepare the data for the template. So we need some view params, and first of all I need to pass it the user that I may have fetched here, because we may not actually have a user, and I'm going to use this new operator that allows me to just use a variable and assign it to a default value if it's not set. And then I also want to fetch all the users in the database because I've only got 4. And I'm going to call them users, and I'm going to do a very quick this finder xf user, which will find all of the users in the database. I don't need to call fetch because I'm passing the finder directly to the template system, and the template will automatically call fetch if it needs to. So then I just need to return a view. So let's just go and grab one of those. Stick it in there, and we're going to call this note user, give it demo pad user here, and then we can turn up at the front end, get rid of that user ID parameter, and hopefully this will come up. Here we go. So there's the individual users that we could click on. I don't know if you can see the URL that's coming up down here when I hover over those, but you can see that it's not actually picking the user up. And the reason for that is because we're not in, we haven't actually sent any parameters to it. But because we're using the notes route, I can't just specify the user here. You might want to be able to do that, or in fact it's you in this instance, but you can't because the notes route is only expecting a note. So if you pass it a user, it won't know what to do with it. So instead we're going to pass null there, and then we're going to make an array of parameters that is essentially a query string, and it's going to look like this: curly braces, user ID, and this is actually JSON, so then we just say u.user ID, close the curly braces once, and now when I refresh the page, you should see when I hover over these, then we get user ID 1, user ID 2, 3, etc. Presumably, although it seems to have cussed off. Now, what happens if I click on my user? It's picked it up, so it has found the valid user. But how do I get to the note? Well, this is the thing I wanted to show you. All I need to do is reference the notes through the relation, and it automatically fetches them without me having to do any work in PHP at all. I can actually fetch them through the template. Let's do it like this. xf for each loop equals user dot notes as note ID and note, and then we can just reference it straight away. Note dot title, and let's do xf date time equals note dot post date. That should do the trick. Save that out and see if it works. There we go. It's fetched the related items for that user in the template only. No PHP work involved at all. It's just done through the template.